tenho uma questão, na verdade, que eu gostaria de fazer para ti. Eu morei em Chicago, num prédio no 43º andar de um prédio no centro de Chicago. E à noite, uma coisa que a minha esposa, a Geisa, ela notou e me chamou a atenção foi que, como nós vivíamos próximos a prédios no centro de Chicago, na área financeira, administrativa da cidade, nós nos deparávamos com andares inteiros de prédios, andares iluminados, mas sem ninguém trabalhando lá. Então, eu acredito que Berkeley, São Francisco, tem uma outra filosofia de vida, quando a gente compara com os Estados Unidos. Eu posso estar enganado também. A própria Beatriz, que viveu acho que mais de 10 anos em Londres, na Inglaterra, desculpe, talvez também, não sei se lá ela percebeu isso, mas era uma coisa muito perceptível. A grande quantidade de prédios ao nosso redor, com andares vazios, na verdade, as pessoas não estavam trabalhando, mas estavam com as lâmpadas acesas. E aí eu pergunto, por que isso acontece? Entende? É uma dúvida que realmente eu tenho, porque particularmente aqui no Brasil a gente não vê muito isso. Não vê?
Well, I can't apologize for the excessive behavior in the United States. But there are reasons if you look at it from a human-centered design standpoint. So some buildings keep their lights on for safety reasons. So they want to see if burglars come in. If there is, they want to make it visible. So I think it is important to step back and really understand why they're doing that, and then figure out ways to address it. But it's often lights are left on in the United States for safety reasons. I mean, it could be they don't care, but there are other reasons. I was amazed in Saudi Arabia that they have a lot of oil, although they realize the oil is going to run out in 50 years. And the taxi drivers were complaining that they were paying too much, but they were paying 1/10 of the price of fuel that you probably do here. But here are some of the things they do, and so there has to be feedback on shortages. When they go shopping, by the way, is the big thing to do in Saudi Arabia. That's the big entertainment. And so they'll get a driver, women can't drive, so you get a driver, takes you shopping, and you're in the shopping center for 2 or 3 hours. They leave the car running, they don't even turn it off, for 2 to 3 hours, just to make sure that the air conditioning is just right when the shopper comes back. So, it's not, so we all have different things that we consider important in balance. And I think it's important to think about what is it that people are getting out of and why are they doing that. We talked about a lot of human-centered design is asking why. And so I'd go back to the owner or the people that were in those floors and ask why is it on. But security is often a reason, but it could just be that they, here's one thing that happens. It's what actually happened with my smart lighting. Sometimes, even though my students were really good, I'd come into the room, nobody was there, and the light was on. Here we have this smart lighting system to save energy, and all the lights are on in my lab. And so I had to ask, why? Well, it really wasn't any of the students. The custodian came in and left the light on. Because the custodian, the janitor, didn't know how to use the system. So we showed the custodian how to do it. So oftentimes it may be the cleaning crew that's keeping it on as well. So we need to look at a system of systems. Who are the stakeholders, like the custodian? like the people that are using the light, like the building managers, to create human-centered design solutions that work for everyone.
Bom dia, eu me chamo Maria do Carmo, sou professora aqui do curso de Design e eu gostaria de saber alguma coisa a respeito desse último
Thank you
exemplo.
for telling me who you are.
Oi? Oh, yes.
That's what I was trying to find out.
Acho que ela disse que eu falei quem eu era para ela. I don't speak English. I understand more or less.
Você agradeceu por você ter se apresentado.
Pois sim, eu consegui entender isso. Que bom. Thank you. Então, a minha colocação é o seguinte, na condição até mesmo de mãe, não de professora, mas de mãe, porque eu percebo que essa geração toda que vem vindo e lidando com muitos eletrônicos, muitos aparelhos portáteis, eles estão, de uma certa maneira, abrindo mão de questões que são mais sociáveis, do ponto de vista da presença. Por exemplo, esse exemplo agora da questão de utilizar um fone de ouvido que tem uma qualidade tal que nos não permite, inclusive, de ter nenhum envolvimento de som do ambiente. Eu fico pensando se isso não seria um perigo para uma pessoa, se ela está, por exemplo, dirigindo um automóvel, ou se ela, inclusive, está atravessando uma rua no trânsito. Então, o que eu questiono um pouquinho é até que ponto esse grande refinamento desses meios portáteis, eles também não podem ter uma certa tendência a fazer com que as pessoas que usam esses aparelhos acabem por se alienar de uma maneira, muitas vezes, até perigosa na sua própria segurança física.
Yeah, absolutely. The original application for the headphone solution was for people sitting on airplanes. That was the original one. You're separated geographically. You can't necessarily get up and talk to people, and you're listening to music. So how do you talk to a friend that's 4 aisles up? That was their original application. It's happening anyway, though. Whether they're talking to each other or not, there are a lot of accidents with students, particularly at universities, getting run over because they're not watching the crosswalk. So I share your concern, but the question is, how do you solve it? What's the best way to solve it? Do you teach your kids not to wear it when they go on a crosswalk? Do you try to change behavior, or do you try to use the technology to make them safer? But I think that's, as a designer, that's our challenge, and those are the questions we should be asking. At UC Berkeley, in our business school, they don't allow students to use cell phones or computers in a lecture because they're worried the students won't be listening or will be texting or something else. I don't like that philosophy because I feel that if you force people to do something, they'll find some way to get around it. So I'd rather have a good lecture where they'd want to listen. I'd rather have interactive activities where they're taking notes or they're using computer in some successful way. But even when I do that, I work on hand activities. Most of my interaction activities for education are physical activities. And my project with Samsung is looking at tangible versus digital, and where you want to stay tangible, where we were talking about designers like to have tangible notebooks. They take notes in, they draw in, and the digital world isn't there yet. So how can the two talk to each other, for example? So I think the solution is looking at what is best done in the tangible world, what's best done in the digital world, and where the two come together.
Olá, Alice. Meu nome é Geisa. Estava falando sobre a minha pulseira que monitora. E a minha dúvida é o seguinte: eu criei uma meta para mim diária de movimento. E toda hora todo dia eu vou lá no computador e vejo se eu alcancei ou não alcancei, como é que está meu gráfico. E isso aí é realmente importante para mim. Eu fico pensando, eu fiquei, na verdade, escrava de uma coisa que é uma besteira, mas eu gosto. Então eu queria saber, assim, tem muita coisa envolvendo internet, inovação, mas o que realmente a gente precisa para viver de uma maneira confortável, um bem-estar, porque eu vejo que tem muita coisa como isso aqui que é completamente dispensável. É uma besteira minha, tudo bem, eu gosto, mas não é necessário. E se isso aqui estragar, depois de 1 ano que eu comprei, ele vai fora, não tem conserto. Então é uma coisa assim que não tem porquê. Então eu queria saber assim, a tua opinião sobre várias coisas que a gente recebe de informação, de produtos novos, e que a gente acaba despertando uma necessidade que realmente ela não é uma necessidade. A gente cria uma necessidade que não existe, na verdade.
Well, you're unusual in that you actually look at it every day. Half of those products are used once and thrown out. So a lot of people think they can improve their health or improve their exercise. They don't actually use it. The website is a little complicated. They don't necessarily get the feedback right away when they want it. So you're actually a success story in one respect, in that you're using it daily. Does it help you achieve your goals? Are you moving your goals up? No. So why do you look at it? You don't know, okay. But I personally don't think there's anything wrong if you like it. It's getting you to think about your health, it's thinking about whatever your exercise that you're doing. I personally don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think you're addicted to it. Do you think she's addicted to it?
Yes.
Oh, she is, okay. But young and old people are addicted to listening and talking on their cell phone now. They're tweeting, they're looking at Facebook. It is doing something good for them. And why? There's something called, we were talking about persuasive technologies. How can you use the human condition that likes the media, that likes the feedback, that likes the graphics, we're social animals, that likes this communication. How can you use that to change behavior in positive ways? And that's what social computing and persuasive computing is all about. I don't want to use it for advertising and buying more things. As designers, I'd like to take our energy and apply it to how do we change behavior so we have less obesity, so we have healthier people that are thinking about their exercise. See, I think that's a good thing. How do we do it so that people change behavior so they're using less energy? Perhaps so that they're giving back to communities, so they're doing things that help their community socially. That's our design challenge.
Eu também fiquei viciado. Eu tenho um outro relógio da Nike, e foi aí que eu comecei a correr, né? E eu me lembro que é como se fossem faixas de judô a partir do momento que você vai cumprindo algumas metas, né? Eu me lembro quando eu ainda era faixa branca e passei para laranja, né? E apareceu um vídeo de um ator americano na tela do computador, assim quando eu conectei o relógio para atualizar os dados, e ele disse assim para mim: fulano de tal me disse que você conseguiu cumprir sua meta, meus parabéns. Faz o seguinte, coloca uma camisa laranja, sai, isso eram 50 quilômetros apenas, um ano, algo do tipo. Você conseguiu cumprir a sua meta, bota uma camisa laranja, sai e diz, e se alguém perguntar para você, você diz o seguinte: eu estou vestindo laranja porque, você sabe, eu sou atleta, né? E aí aquilo acabou, eu achei tão engraçado, mas tão engraçado, que eu começava a esperar os próximos vídeos. Então comecei a correr e até mais rápido para cumprir a próxima meta, para saber o que eles iam me falar. Mas existe também o Tom McTavish, professor do Instituto de Design do Illinois Institute of Technology. Ele me apresentou um artigo, eu não recordo o autor, da Self-Motivation Theory, talvez desenvolvendo algo que a Geisa acabou se motivando a fazer para se motivar para algo, talvez fazer mais exercícios, ou não sei, ou eu também começar a correr, que era um sonho que eu tinha, e isso faz com que eu me motive cada vez mais a estar correndo, etc. Acaba criando para mim, eu estou falando do ponto de vista do usuário, uma conexão minha com o produto. Eu não vejo mais o relógio, aquilo como desnecessário, mas eu vejo algo como vai me ajudar a melhorar a minha saúde, né? Eu vou ficar mais saudável, etc.
Well, I noticed that you're both in good shape.
She's in good shape.
I mean, that's the goal. I mean, that is the goal of persuasive computing, or computing that actually benefits people, and social networking. And it can be done digitally, it can be done tangibly. One of the best examples of use of feedback is a tangible example. The benefit of digital, you can do it more frequently. But there's a town in Germany that had a small sidewalk in front of large houses, and they wanted, as a community, to reduce their energy usage. And so social pressure and sharing can be very persuasive. And so they wanted to know at each house how much energy was used per day, and then use that to get people to use less energy. And the way they did it is they took the energy in the morning that had been used the previous day, and on the sidewalk they marked in chalk on the sidewalk, so everybody would see how much energy was used in the house in front of them. Nothing digital about it, but that feedback changed behavior. And so the feedback is useful whether it's a tutor giving feedback to a student, or it's you getting feedback from your digital watch. How can we do it so that it is as effective as a trainer, or as effective as a tutor in giving us feedback? I think that's a good thing, and that's our challenge about what's best done digitally, what's best done in person. Thanks for sharing your example.
Hello, my name is Simone. I'm a design student at UIGS here. First of all, thank you for coming, for your presentation. It was amazing to see all these products developed with Internet of Things features. But when I think in the context of Brazil, that we still have a gap.
Really?
But she's speaking English, you can repeat
this. Okay, I was hearing Portuguese translation.
I'm sorry. Should I start again?
No, please, yes, please do.
Okay, so thank you for coming. Your presentation was great. It was amazing to see all these products being developed using Internet of Things features. But when I think in the context of Brazil, that we still have a gap between rich people and poor people, and people that doesn't have even a residence to live. I'm afraid to design things that are not for well-being, to increase well-being of our society. So my question is, what is your advice to design things that really increase well-being and not just for one class? Thank you.
That's a wonderful question. Actually, I'm chair of the Development Engineering Program at UC Berkeley, which works at the bottom of the pyramid for the poorest of the poor across the world. And we're looking at just those issues. Locally, I've been working with Native American tribes that have 80–90% unemployment. And almost all their money was being spent, what little money they had, was being spent on propane, as an example, for heating, and they were given government housing that were sort of trailers that had formaldehyde and poor insulation, so they're spending all their money on fuel. And they came to the Berkeley campus and talked to Native American students and said, you know, you made it to college, help us now, give back. And they came to me, and I was a little concerned because I was not a member of their tribe, and they rightly so have reason to be suspicious of white people because the U.S. government killed them, abused them, took away their land. But I worked with the tribal council, and we worked on what I developed called innovation workshops, which empower the poor. The whole idea is they know their needs better than I do. So as designers, we need to understand what their needs are and what the fundamental needs are, and we need to empower people that don't have power so they can express themselves and they can design their own solutions or co-design their own solutions. So we had co-design workshops. We worked on and prioritized what was important to them. And originally they came in saying they wanted to reduce the energy costs in their homes. At the end of the day, we reframed. I'm a big proponent of reframing problems because it's the question you ask that will direct how you spend your design efforts. And so after the end of the day, we reframed them, and it wasn't just energy savings they wanted. They wanted to be in harmony with the environment. They wanted to be self-sufficient economically, and that is a completely different perspective on what their needs were. So they decided that they wanted to develop demonstration homes that were sustainable, but use natural resources to be in harmony with the environment, teach their youth and their adults green jobs, so they could get jobs and be economically self-sufficient, become educated in technology so they would go to college and become engineers, and so that they could have renewable energy on their reservation. Now that seemed like a pipe dream, something impossible for this community to do, but we moved forward with those goals. And we co-designed a home and what it would look like, how it would benefit the youth in this tribe. The youth do not speak up until the elders speak up. So we divided them into different age groups to make sure that we heard from every demographic in the group. Sometimes you have to do this in some cultures. In India, for example, separate the men from the women because they might have different values. And so we look at different cultural groups to make sure that we've heard from each cultural group to understand what their needs are and how they can work together. The students came up with some concepts. The tribe said they liked round places, that there are evil spirits in corners, and their history had round houses. So it's hard to make round houses. It's expensive to twist wood to make it round. And so as a co-design, we came up with straw bale. We grow rice in California, and so the bale from the rice can be used to make high insulation homes, and you put a kind of a clay around it, kind of like adobe on the outside of the home. And we worked with them. We trained them on how to sense the wind anemometers, how to sense the insulation from the sun to figure out where to place the homes. And we helped them. They actually submitted a proposal. They won $2 million to build 4 of those demonstration homes. And we co-built the homes. My students and I learned how to build straw bale homes together with the tribe. And the medicine man for the tribe is going to be one of the first people that lives in the home. And our next step is to measure and see whether, in fact, it's saving energy or not, and whether it's meeting their needs. And they were very excited about their children designing the packaging for the sensors, and their children taking the measurements. So we've got an infrared gun that they can shine on the inside of the wall and the outside of the wall and see how much heat is being lost. And so their children are learning a little bit about energy when they do this as well. But in the developing world, we look hard at what is the appropriate technology. For example, one project that I've been involved in is called the Solar Suitcase, We Care Solar, and it was started by a woman obstetrician who had worked in Nigeria and discovered that if a woman started delivering at night and there was no light, and they had to give a cesarean or whatever, they were delivering a child in the dark. And there was no way to really effectively be able to take care of that woman at night. And so she said, well, they're in Africa. They've got lots of sun. Let's get a battery and store energy. And so they put solar panels on the roofs of the hospital. And this is the aha moment for them, is they did get light. The doctors were able to deliver babies in which there was medical care at night. But here's the interesting thing that happened. There are more cell phones than landlines in Africa. I mean, that's how they communicate. There are a lot of inexpensive, functional cell phones. The women could come to the medical center to charge their cell phone and get prenatal care. They weren't doing that before. They couldn't afford, or they didn't come into the medical center to get care for their pregnancy. And because they came in and could charge their cell phone for free at the hospital, they were getting medical care much earlier, and that improved their final health. So it helped the women, it was safer, the doctors were able to give more care, and they were able to use their cell phone more often. So we need to think of the appropriate technology, but what is the actual need in a particular community? And thank you for the question. To me, it's really important to do that.
Bom dia. Meu nome é Leonardo, sou desenhista industrial. E a minha pergunta é que você falou do medo de não saber consertar as coisas.
I think I need to put them on my... Where'd it go? Here it is. Okay.
Bom dia, meu nome é Leonardo, eu sou desenhista industrial e faço mestrado aqui na URGS. E a minha pergunta é que você falou do medo de não saber consertar as coisas, mas eu tenho um medo que surgiu, que é a dependência desses sistemas, que também você falou. Por tempos eu pensei em projetar produtos que não dependessem de um sistema pela segurança de conseguir utilizar o produto. Porque no Brasil, pelo menos, os sistemas são instáveis e muita gente não tem acesso. Eu queria saber se eu devo vencer esse medo ou se eu posso continuar projetando produtos para usar fora do sistema.
Good question. I mean, is there an expectation that you should be able to use your product at all times? If that's important, then you got to figure out how to be robust on the system. In some countries, it doesn't have to work all the time, and they're used to sporadic power, and they use it when it's available. So I think it's a design problem. But I wouldn't be afraid. I mean, you'd solve it. It's part of the system. How can you be robust when there is uncertainty in the overall system or the overall network? How can you make that a positive to people's lives? You know, it's interesting. One of the projects I'm on the advisory board for is for people that want to communicate on controversial political ideas in areas that have oppressive governments that won't let them talk. It's a very edgy project. And what they discovered, and this is their solution, in how to have security on communication on controversial topics, is that they can take advantage of local networks whenever they get them without having to register on the network and identify who they are. And so the solution is they'll queue up a message they want to send, and then when they're in a secure network, wherever they're at, it uploads and keeps it anonymous. So it takes advantage of the sporadic access of a network for anonymity.
Thank you.
Então, última questão.
Bom dia, meu nome é Rafael, sou designer de produto e microempresário. Parabéns pela palestra, informações preciosas aí, considero. Eu gostaria de citar um exemplo para depois fazer uma pergunta. Nós temos um viaduto aqui próximo, o viaduto da Conceição, que foi reformado recentemente, 1 ou 2 anos. Não sou especialista em iluminação, porém considero que há um defeito grave, talvez, no projeto, que ele tem iluminação em excesso e também foi usado lâmpadas, refletores de vapor metálico ou algum similar. Todos nós sabemos que o LED é uma tecnologia que tem muitas vantagens, principalmente a questão de redução de energia. Então, considerando esse exemplo, pergunto o seguinte: eu, no papel de designer de produto, microempresário, se tu tens algum exemplo para citar da realidade dos Estados Unidos e de projetos que tu já participaste, como viabilizar as ideias tão legais que tu apresentou hoje aqui para a nossa realidade aqui do Brasil?
I'm not sure what the problem with the aqueduct was. It gets lightning, and the lightning does what to it?
Não, foi feita uma reforma geral nesse viaduto, nesse túnel, e a parte de iluminação foi toda refeita.
Oh, lighting. I'm sorry, I heard you wrong. Yeah. Well, I can speak more generally to infrastructure projects. So, for example, on bridges, they're putting sensors, strain gauges on the bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area that can detect in real time whether the bridge is getting stressed so that they can repair it ahead of time. I worked with General Electric on what's called prognosis, so that if you can monitor heavy equipment remotely, you can get feedback so that you can correct a problem before it becomes a catastrophic failure. We're monitoring water levels in some areas. The piping systems, is there a potential small leak in a water system or a gas line? We had a catastrophic failure of gas lines in the San Francisco area that motivated us to put monitors in the piping so that if there's a small leak that you can't see because it's underground, that we can identify that it's a potential problem before it becomes a catastrophic problem. Is that what you're asking?
Também ajudo a resposta, mas eu pergunto mais como transformar ideias como essa, similares a essa, na realidade de designer de produto ou um microempresário. Como viabilizar um produto, um sistema, um projeto desse no nosso contexto brasileiro? Isso que é a pergunta.
Maybe somebody else here could answer that, because I don't know enough about. I know about the context, but I'm a strong proponent of a playground, of getting some platforms that have the sensor technology that you want, and just do it and try it out and get feedback. Of prototyping, getting feedback, and designing. And there are some inexpensive wireless sensor network platforms that you can buy now and just design with it, whether it's Arduinos or something else, and just design some of the ideas you have and get feedback. I think rather than talk about it, building it and doing it and getting feedback is the best way to design for a context. But maybe someone in the audience knows more about the Brazilian context. Did you want to?
Bom, eu acho que, se eu entendi a pergunta, eu acho que acaba sendo um problema de natureza política até, porque o exemplo que você colocou primeiro, o exemplo é um problema de natureza política, de como a municipalidade, o Estado lida com essas questões. Pelo que eu entendi, a gente está usando tecnologia ultrapassada, vencida, quando está fazendo uma reforma. Com relação à sua pergunta, É difícil. Eu acho que é um problema... É um problema por um lado, um problema de design, como se coloca como designer e microempresário, e, por outro lado, como um problema de empreendedor. Nos dois casos, a questão é acreditar na sua proposta, tentar torná-la viável, descobrir seu espírito animal, quer dizer, ou descobrir não, deixar aflorar, né, e usar... não tem resposta. Na verdade, assim, envolve depois um bom trabalho de gestão, um trabalho de fundamentação. Fundamentalmente, tem que acreditar. Né? Eu, como professor aqui na URGS, tenho trabalhado nos últimos semestres tentando motivar esse tipo de ação, assim, de gerar novos negócios. A minha parceria com o Maurício também é nesse sentido, assim, como nós podemos viabilizar novos negócios, né? Mas que eu saiba, não existe, não é um problema, não é um problema que tem um algoritmo que vai resolver. Enfim, tentei responder. Posso fazer uma pergunta, colocar uma questão? Eu acho fascinante, e o Maurício, ele disse que inspirou os alunos, inspirou também os professores. No início da sua fala, ao final da sua fala, a fala inspirou não só os alunos, como os professores. Eu tenho várias ideias para trocar com ele, com relação à internet das coisas. Mas uma preocupação, eu tenho um amigo que é professor aqui na universidade, na área de engenharia elétrica, e ele tem, a pesquisa dele é sobre os efeitos térmicos da micro-ondas, do celular, no cérebro. Existem estudos nos Estados Unidos e na Europa que tratam disso. Já melhorou a tecnologia, mas existe um conflito entre a indústria e os organismos de saúde. O Google Glass, particularmente, ele apresenta riscos muito sérios, porque inclusive ele atua numa frequência que é fora da frequência de celulares, uma frequência não protegida pelas regulações, pelas regras de proteção nos Estados Unidos, Japão e Europa. Por um lado, nós temos algo fantástico, né, de integrar pessoas. Por outro lado, nós estamos vivendo algo que provavelmente vai gerar vai ser resolvido por seleção natural ao longo de algum tempo. Nós não fomos, o organismo humano não foi selecionado para resistir a esse tipo de frequência. Sim, a frequência de FM e AM, sim, de rádios. E nós hoje estamos vivendo em casa, no ambiente de trabalho, em qualquer lugar, nós estamos sendo bombardeados, não, nós estamos sendo atravessados por micro-ondas numa intensidade cada vez maior. Como lidar com os benefícios da internet das coisas e os malefícios? Porque quando nós estamos trabalhando com fio, é uma coisa, como responder à questão de edifícios, mas tecnologia sem fio é um risco muito grande, nós não sabemos ainda onde vamos parar. Como lidar com isso? Isso é um problema de design também. Tem estudado, vocês têm acesso a esse tipo de... Quer dizer, tem acesso? Tem, mas tem acompanhado esse tipo de discussão sobre efeitos, câncer de cérebro, particularmente o cérebro, mas também outras áreas do corpo.
Well, I think there are risks with any technology.
Yeah.
It's my understanding the brain cancer problem has been refuted. I could be wrong, I don't know.
No.
But regardless, any technology has its downside, and anything we do in design should consider the positive and the negative aspects of it. The biggest danger to our life may be toxins in the environment the Internet of Things could detect. So, where are the real problems in our life that are reducing our health and our longevity, and focus on what's most important? But it's my understanding the problem is more electronic interference with the different wavelengths as opposed to the human body. But we can monitor that. At least we have the ability to monitor that. Whereas we don't know how many chemicals we ingest now, how many of those are carcinogenic, how much are those in the environment, how much interference we're getting with any number of types of technology. Why is it that women are getting more breast cancer these days? Why is it, what is the exposure that is causing a lot of the health problems? I think the answer is sensing and getting feedback and doing the science.
Desculpa, eu ia falar em português mesmo, mas é mais fácil. Eu sei que existem estudos que refutam o risco de câncer, mas existem estudos que e nós sabemos que a ciência, ela também, em certos momentos, ela é afetada por interesses econômicos muito fortes, como na indústria farmacêutica. E o maior risco é com crianças, por causa pelo percentual de água no cérebro, tem uma série de variáveis de formação. Então, eu acho que existem algumas coisas. Enfim, existe na Alemanha, usa o princípio da prevenção. Os Estados Unidos e outros países usam a questão de risco, análise de risco. São duas abordagens diferentes. E eu acho que talvez, por segurança, devêssemos projetar produtos para crianças que reduzissem esse tipo de exposição, particularmente.
Yeah, well, I've looked at who you test on. For instance, I'm really concerned about gender and how most of the testing actually is done on men and not on women, and it's doubly difficult when you're testing children. So, for instance, the first generation of airbags had the potential to kill more women than to save women. 40% of the population, if you wore a seatbelt, 40% of the U.S. population was less safe with an airbag. Because being in an accident, you could get your chest broken, your neck broken, if you were a small woman or a small man, and 40% of the women. And all of the children pretty much were less, if they wore a seatbelt, they were less safe with an airbag. How is it that the automotive industry spent billions of dollars to design airbags and created a device that made it less safe for 50% of the population? And the reason is they tested all airbags initially on the average American man. 5'10", 170-pound test dummies, literally that's what they use to test all airbags. And the solution was to put the children in the back seat. But are you going to put your women in the back seat? They had to redesign the airbags. So I think it is, like anything we design, important to test on the population that we're intending to use. And it's hard to test on children. It's hard to test on pregnant women. The first pregnancy pills were tested on men, not on women. So, it is hard to do because of safety. They would advise young children not to get too close to the TV for the electromagnetic radiation as well. So they would sit for hours in front of a big TV screen that they should step back. So we don't know unless we test it. There are some industries that have hidden their data. The tobacco industry, for instance. I don't know that in the electronics industry that's the case, but I could be wrong. But there definitely are some examples in industry where there were huge hazards, and the companies did the testing, found the hazards, but lied about it, or refused to tell the public about it. So I think as citizens, we always need to be very cognizant and cautious about when that might happen. And one of my colleagues at UC San Francisco actually exposed the tobacco papers. He was the one that released the tobacco industry studies that showed that they knew about the carcinogenic effects of tobacco, even though they were lying to Congress to say that they didn't know. So I think it is important for us as designers to be very diligent. But if I go back to this question, I think, I'd hate to keep that from us being innovative. I think, to hold us back, to explore, to take risks, but always monitor and be cautious about the negative effects as much as we're passionate about the positive effects.